This is the Go Maluku podcast.
What is 6.4? No, so what is 6.2, 6.4, and 6.8 for dummies? All right. So I started talking about Article 6, right? So which is it's the framework, but there are some issues that still need to be resolved of Article 6. So Article 6 has a number of subparagraphs, and 6.2, 6.4, and 6.8 are subparagraphs that they couldn't get an agreement on in Madrid. So those were the things that we still need to deal with here in Glasgow. 6.2, it also talks about cooperative approaches. So basically the lateral approach. So what are the guidelines for states to meet their NDCs, and what needs to be done in terms of reporting, participation, and those what are the rules for that? And so that's what we've been discussing under the heading cooperative approaches, or in COP lingo, 6.2. And then you have 6.4, which has more of a top-down approach. There is a mechanism that needs to be put in place so that if these countries that are talking to each other in terms of the guidelines and the approaches to do that they're going to deploy to help each other with meeting their NDCs, there's this sustainable development mechanism that's top down that actually outlines, all right, what needs to be done, how can an activity be approved or not approved, and this activity, what are the parameters for it, what is the framework, what are the rules. That's all under 6.4, the Sustainable Development Mechanism, which is a new version of the Clean Development Mechanism, which also meant that there were parties around the table that wanted to have RED Plus into 6.4. Sorry, I'm deviating. So 6.4 it lays out what this Sustainable Development Mechanism does. It has a superior body, so like a governing structure in there, So what needs to be done to approve these activities, or the design and implement these activities? That is 6.4. 6.8 has nothing to do with credits. It is actually the best version of helping each other with meeting your NDCs, your pledges, because it's actually the subparagraph on non-market approaches. So everything else was on market approaches. 6.8 is on non-market approaches. So it is in a way, the stupid thing is that there was more focus on 6.2 and 6.4 during COP, but not a big focus or huge focus on 6.8. Whereas that's actually the better way of helping each other without incentives like credits. So that is in it for dummies, 6.2, 6.4, and 6.8. Now, a little bit of a side note here is that there's a lot of people that see this as a false solution. There's a lot of people that believe that this to be this pushing around carbon credits, and in a way, my overall impression of Article 6 is that it's not a market. There's no market. There's no supply and demand. There's no platform where everything comes together, suppliers and demand, and there's just the lateral approach, and then there's in a way it is it's not transparent. A normal market is transparent, and this one is not transparent at all. Hence the need that there are safeguards in there. Because if there was a transparent market, you could actually keep an eye on things and make sure that they're all in line with human rights and rights of indigenous peoples. Because this is not so transparent as it advertises to be, you need to have safeguards in there. You need to have human rights safeguards in the cooperative approach. You need to have safeguards in the sustainable development mechanism, and you need to also have human rights approach and indigenous rights based approach in the non-market approaches. People would argue, well, why in the world would you need human rights based approach in non-market approaches? Because we believe, in our view, and not just from indigenous people's point of view, but in throughout all constituencies, that all climate action needs to be rights based. So all climate action. So even if it's non-market, there needs to be a rights based approach, because there's always a loophole. And we do see in Article 6 there are loopholes that have been built in terms of accounting, in terms of carryover. There are loopholes in there. So that's why it was imperative that we have operationalized the human rights and the rights of indigenous peoples in Article 6, so that it's enforceable, that it's in there, that they do have to deal with it. And not just in the preamble, but they do have to deal with it. And it's because it is such an autonomous mechanism that it can just move on its own. It is important that we have these standards built in there that they are unequivocal, that are like thresholds. You have to go through the threshold before you start to engage in these cooperative approaches, or you start designing these activities. So that's before I veer off into a rant about and answering a lot of questions at once. The 6.2, 6.4, and 6.8 for dummies.
My friends, I hope you enjoyed this. Please consider to subscribe, to comment, and to share this video on your socials.